Okay, let's dive into one of the most bizarre medical mysteries of the entire 20th century. We're talking about an epidemic that wasn't caused by a virus or bacteria, but by an uncontrollable emotion. The local Bahia people, they had a name for it, Andwari Yokasheka. It translates pretty simply to the illness of laughing. And that name perfectly captures the strange affliction that just seemed to appear out of nowhere in East Africa back in 1962.
So picture this. It's January 30th, 1962, at a mission-run boarding school for girls ages 12 to 18. And it's in this small village that something completely inexplicable kicks off with just 3 students.
And what started with just 3 girls, well, it spiraled, and fast. In just a matter of weeks, 95 of the school's 159 students were hit with these fits of uncontrollable laughing and crying. The whole situation got so out of hand that by March 18th, they had no choice but to shut the school down.
So what did this laughing sickness actually look like? That name is almost deceptively simple because the reality of it was way more complex and, frankly, pretty distressing.
The mix of symptoms was just weird. First off, it came on suddenly. Victims would be just overcome by these attacks of laughing and crying that could go on for hours. They were restless, and sometimes, if you tried to restrain them, they'd even become violent. And get this, these episodes could pop up on and off for up to 16 days. But here's the real kicker. There were no physical signs. No fever, no signs of infection, nothing doctors could actually point to and say, aha, that's it.
Okay, so they closed the school, sent the girls home. Problem solved, right? Not even close. In fact, that's when the real mystery began. The illness didn't stop. It started to travel. It spread just like you'd expect a classic virus to spread. After the first school closed, girls went back home to their village of Nshamba, and pretty soon, 217 people there had it. From Shamba, it jumped to another school, Ramashenye, and then to other villages. The pattern was undeniable. A sick student would go home, and then an outbreak would just erupt, starting with their family and then spreading to the neighbors. Over the next 6 months, it ended up disrupting thousands of lives and closing more than a dozen schools.
So you can imagine, with this thing spreading like wildfire and communities getting really scared, investigators were scrambling to find some kind of logical, scientific reason for all the chaos. Right away, they had 2 main suspects in their sights. The usual culprits for any epidemic. 1, a contagious virus making its way through the population, or 2, a poison, maybe a toxin that had gotten into the food supply. First, they went hard after the virus theory. And I mean, they were thorough. They did lumbar punctures, normal. They checked white blood counts, also normal. They sent samples to a top virus research institute, tried to grow a virus. Nothing. Checked the blood for antibodies, negative. The evidence was just crystal clear. This was not a conventional infectious disease. So with the virus theory debunked, they turned their attention to suspect number 2, food poisoning. And there were rumors going around. Some locals were absolutely convinced that the maize flour, which was a staple food at the schools, had been poisoned. Investigators even looked into the idea that it was contaminated with datura seeds, which were known to cause poisoning with some similar symptoms. But when they actually put the symptoms side by side, the whole theory just fell apart. The symptoms didn't match up. I mean, datura poisoning lasts for a few hours, not 16 days. It causes fixed, non-reactive pupils and muscle incoordination, none of which was happening here. And the final nail in the coffin? Other schools and hospitals were eating the exact same batch of maize flour with 0 problems. The toxin theory was a complete dead end.
So, they've ruled out a virus. They've ruled out a toxin. What's left? Well, the investigators were left with a conclusion that was startling, unconventional, and, for many people, pretty unsettling.
This quote from the original medical report really says it all. After hitting dead end after dead end, the doctors came to a radical conclusion. This wasn't an illness of the body at all. They diagnosed it as mass hysteria, an illness of the mind.
So, what even is mass hysteria? Today, we'd probably call it mass psychogenic illness, but it's this fascinating and very real phenomenon. It's basically when the symptoms of a condition, whether it's laughing or fainting or even pain, spread like a contagion through a group of people, but there's no actual physical cause to be found.
It's a kind of social contagion. It doesn't spread through germs in the air, it spreads through sight and through suggestion.
If you see someone else experiencing intense distress, especially if you're in a closed-off, high-stress environment like, say, a boarding school, it can trigger a genuine physical stress response in your own body. It's the mind's incredible power to turn psychological stress into physical symptoms.
And here's the thing, as totally bizarre as the Tanganyika epidemic sounds, it's not some weird one-off event. It's actually part of a much larger, much stranger pattern that we see throughout human history.
I mean, history is full of these outbreaks. In medieval Europe, there were the infamous dancing manias, where people would just start dancing uncontrollably, sometimes for days, until they collapsed from sheer exhaustion. In 1800s America, a big religious revival in Kentucky had people barking like dogs or falling into trances. These are all examples of mass psychogenic illness, just expressing themselves in very different ways.
And this is the key insight right here. The original investigators figured out that the way this hysteria shows itself is profoundly shaped by its cultural context. In a society that's stressed out by the plague, maybe it comes out as dancing. But for the girls in Tanganyika who were living under the immense pressure of a very strict mission school in a country going through massive change, all that stress found an outlet in the one emotional expression they couldn't suppress: laughing and crying.
So, after all this, what's the big takeaway? The Tanganyika laughing epidemic is this wild and honestly kind of chilling reminder that our psychological states, our stress, our fear, our emotions, can spread through a community with the same speed and power as any virus. And that really leaves us with a final thought to chew on. Back in 1962, this epidemic spread through physical contact, through word of mouth. But today, we live in a world that is hyper-connected by social media, a world where emotions can be amplified and broadcast to millions in an instant. It really makes you wonder, what might a modern-day epidemic of the mind look like?